Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge. So sit back, relax and enjoy some Reddit stories. Guy steals $400 of gas, but I get the last laugh. Backstory: I used to work at a marina when I was in high school that sold gas and allowed people to dock for free if they wanted to. Now, one day, a guy comes in on a pretty big boat. He comes in and gets a lot of gas, like $400 worth of gas. He comes to the counter to pay and gives me $400 in $100 bills, and I accept them and he goes on his merry way. Fast forward a week or so and I am told by my boss that the bills he paid in were all counterfeit bills. Unfortunately, as he paid in cash, we had no way of tracking him down. So we think that he just got away with stealing $400 worth of gas. That is, until this idiot comes back after about a month and a half thinking he got away with stealing the gas. When he comes back in, I recognize the guy and tell my coworkers to call the police right away. However, I knew that this guy would just leave if I let on that I'd recognized him and we had discovered his plot to get free gas. So I decide to pretend I don't recognize him. Luckily for me, this guy asks to dock the boat for an hour or so on our dock, and I tell him it's not a problem. Now, it is policy to get the name and phone number of customers using free dockage, as well as asking that they leave their keys in the boat so that we can move the boat to a different dock if needed. He complies to all of the rules and leaves his boat. And he leaves his keys with me. After probably about 15 minutes of waiting, the police show up on the dock and ask my boss where the guy is. My boss tells them he just left his boat, but we have his number and we can get him to come back to the boat, and he then instructs me to do just that. At this point, I was ticked at this dude for making me look dumb for basically losing $400. So I call him and tell him, "Hey, this is me from Marina. It seems as though there is an issue with your engine and it seems to be smoking." For those that don't know boats that well, engines are very expensive, and this one in particular was a 350 horsepower Yamaha engine, which is top of the line, so that man got back to the boat in record time. When he got back to the boat, the look on his face when he saw two cops waiting for him was priceless. He tried to play it off and act like he had done nothing wrong, and he didn't know why the police were there, but that was short-lived as they arrested him and told him why he was being arrested. Turns out the guy had almost $2,000 in counterfeit $100 bills on him. Surely if you know you have counterfeit bills, you wouldn't pay with 4 $100 bills, like that's so suspect. You'd probably exchange them for smaller bills first that are real and then do it. Not that I'm condoning doing it. Don't litter, folks, you might find yourself at the receiving end of my devious father. This was many years ago when I was around 5, which is 23 years ago, so it's more about my father instead. My house was on a lower class side of town, mostly of more poor folks and retirees who had lived there before it went downhill. Our backyard butted right up against an alleyway that was a constant source of problems. As an example, we had a 15-foot diameter trampoline stolen from our backyard. This thing had been rusted together, so I can only figure they popped it up on its side and rolled it away like a big tire. Anyways, back to the story. The house across the alley from us was a duplex kind of thing, and the landlord would rent to literally anyone. One guy he rented to was a fairly prolific dealer who ran his gig literally out of his kitchen window. Cars would pull up through the alley, into the yard/parking, hands would move back and forth, then the car would drive away. This guy legit had a drug drive-through. It didn't take long for my parents to find all kinds of undesirable trash migrating its way into our yard. Needles, burned spoons, broken pipes, who knows what else. My parents were worried about my dumb 5-year-old butt getting into something or hurting myself with something that could decidedly harm me. My mother was a nurse before being disabled in a severe car accident and had been infected with hepatitis C while working at the hospital due to a needle that had been missed. So she was super worried about this for me as well as a handful of other kids in the neighborhood. Conversations with the landlord, including gathered evidence, made no difference. He didn't live there, why did he care? Eventually, my parents tried to call the cops. The local police department was not helpful. They said they couldn't investigate or even send out a car on someone's word. This wasn't our first problem with the local cops either, having our cars and other things broken into or stolen. They told my parents to write down license plate numbers, and if any matches a known felon or someone with a warrant, they would investigate. So my mother sat at the window for a full day and wrote down every plate she could see, hiding carefully the whole time. She ended the day with over 100 plates. That's how busy this guy was. We faxed, remember it was the 90s, the numbers along with a letter explaining what the numbers were for and who we had spoken with to the PD. Nothing happened. After several weeks they called back and were told there were no matches of any kind. After another week of the problem simply getting worse, my father decides to take matters into his own hands. One night, with no moon, he sneaks into the driveway and throws roofing nails he had bought the previous day all into their area, hundreds of them. We watched for weeks as seemingly every tweaker in town would stop and almost immediately have to fix flats. Evidently, either business dwindled so much, or the renter figured out someone was messing with them, maybe both, that they finally moved. The landlord spent over 2 weeks of having cleaning crews and the like over, throwing out huge mounds of garbage, and repair crews to fix the damage that I later found out was caused by the renter. It seems they trashed and stripped the place before disappearing some night without us noticing. The moral here? Not really one exactly, except for maybe the landlord. Be more selective with who you let live in your house, maybe? Hey, well, if you're gonna throw sharp things on the floor, then you're probably gonna have to deal with sharp things on the floor. Proved racist by his own rules. So at my last job in a call center, we were informed upon applying that we were an incoming call only center. Day 3 of training, it is revealed that no, we have to do outgoing calls on a dialer of the customers of our employer to see if they want a smart meter. Now, everyone hates these calls. You hate receiving them, we hate making them. The worst part of them was because we were connected to the automatic dialer, everything we said was recorded, both while talking to customers and when waiting for the next response. Now Jerry. Jerry is a line manager for a bay of callers. Not my manager, not my bay, but Jerry has a habit of trying to do the head of operations job. He would say he would fill in your overtime paperwork for you and forget. His friends would be allowed to take hour-long respite breaks when I get a 15-minute lunch and chewed out even if I'm a minute late, even though I've still not been given lift access and have to try and walk with my walking stick to conquer 2 flights of stairs, my food and the bathroom in that time, cause God forbid I take a respite break to pee. Found out after that I was actually entitled to a paid hour for lunch, and not to make up time for the 15 minutes unpaid like Jerry had told me. Jerry is also a lad, and there is a lot of lad culture in this call center. Apparently being a lad means banter, such as sexist comments and gestures to all the female staff, homophobic and racist jokes, and touching other staff. Most of this gets waved away though, cause it's hard to prove. I would like to remind you again that while this guy is a manager, he is not my manager. My manager was cool and let everyone get away with the same amount of stuff. Not a lot, but if you wanted to eat fruit at your desk or write limericks on your friend's whiteboard, she would turn a blind eye. One day, I am on outgoing calls, and like everyone else muting my headset between answers because no customer wants to answer the phone to me telling my friends about my latest drama. I get chewed out by him for having my headset on mute too much on my outgoing calls. Okay, first off, why are you listening to my call logs? That's my manager's job, not yours. Second, one of my friends has been recently chewed out for inappropriate conversation by him, which he suggested her using her mute button when not on the call. Me and Jerry were no nemesis. As a disabled LGBT genderqueer feminist lefty, I was basically his polar opposite. We argued a lot and I called him on his BS even more. I would regularly get told I was spending too much time off the phone because of our discussions, but again, they would get waved under the table. Enough. Next time he starts, I am not meant to be an outgoing, but I trade with my friend, who didn't know my plan but was more than happy to trade off the bad job. I start recording but leave myself in paperwork mode so I won't get a call. Then I start replying to him, explaining that if he is going to be racist, he should not do it in the workplace. Asking him why he thinks it's acceptable to say all these racist things right next to where Neem was sitting last week until she quit, and Leia before her, and in fact all the Muslim girls who had been on his team. Then I moved on to the homophobia, asking him why he thought it was appropriate to call Harry Gay Harry, even though he was the only Harry working there. Why he felt the need to loudly disrespect my trans complaint customer calling in because she had literally been attacked in her own home by one of our engineers, especially during one of my callbacks, and since he didn't have any reason to know about her complaint, so as complaints was a different department. And once again, he was not my manager, so he didn't have any reasons to be listening to my calls. At some point, we went on to more personal stuff. His habit of grabbing and playing with my hair, him stealing my walking stick and Paul's crutches, playing with them and leaving them on the other side of the building. But then I went onto the warpath about his comments on biology regarding disabled people being not as good at jobs as able-bodied, and chromosomes only possibly being XX or XY. I am not doing the rant again, but I am very interested in genetics, so let's just leave it at that. He admitted to everything, doubled down too, saying that certain people were inherently evil, women can't take a compliment, there are only two sexes genetically speaking, anyone who identifies as non-straight and cisgender should be sectioned, and everything else he spewed. Now, by this time, I had been off the available calls for nearly an hour of my 6-hour shift. My boss notices later and asks what happened cause I could get fired for that. I suggest she and the head of operations listen to the log. They do. Jerry gets called over to the head boss's desk and leaves a lot quieter and very cross. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact details of what happened. I was scheduled off for a weekend and had an accident, ended up on medical leave for 6 months and then had to quit. Sick pay issues. But I do know from another colleague, he left and moved into his parents' house in London about 2 months after our spat. I also know from a mutual acquaintance that he hasn't got another job in a call center since, so I call it a win.
Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.